So how did you become a musician, and what's your story as an artist and performer?
So I was very fortunate to grow up with both of my parents being in music. My mom was an elementary music teacher, and so before I was born, she had already kind of started to plan out my musical life. She wanted me to.
Oh, moms do that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It went off the rails though because I had other plans. So she wanted me to play French horn or bassoon, and so she continuously played CDs of French horn music and bassoon music and things like that. But she made one flaw in that plan, was that she found a bassoon and harp CD, and little tiny me fixated on the harp instead of the bassoon and started begging for one every single day for about 2 years, from the time I was 2 to the time I was about 4. I then traumatized them all Santa. When I was about 3 and a half, I told them I wanted a harp for Christmas, and they thought I said I wanted a heart. And they were very concerned because mall Santa training does not include medical conditions necessarily. My parents were like, no, the thing with a lot of strings, she's fine medically. She's a little nuts, but she's fine medically. So I got a teeny tiny harp that Christmas, and that was.
You started with the ones with no pedals, right?
Yeah.
They have those harps for kids.
Yeah, I started with like a little one with levers, and I would like play along with music and things. I started lessons more formally when I was about 6. No one wanted to teach a 4-year-old. They didn't trust that I would be able to maintain focus. So I kind of progressed from there. I was in my first youth orchestra when I was 9 and started playing that, and I fell in love with playing an orchestra, and so that was kind of what I've always wanted to do. I was telling people in elementary school that I was going to be a harpist, and they were like, yeah, that's nice. What is that? And so kind of continued on from there. My mom also insisted that I learn a section instrument as well, since in the orchestra the harp is typically by itself, and so again she had kind of a plan with that, and I did not follow the plan.
What was the section instrument?
So for the elementary school system where I grew up, we started strings classes when we were in 3rd grade, and so I picked cello because one of my really good friends that I admired a lot played cello, and I was like, I want to be like her. And so I played cello, and my mom was very much thinking I was going to switch to band the next year, and I never did. So I took cello lessons through high school, and I really loved it. And I think it was a really great thing because it gave me that sense of like playing with other people in that way and understanding how a section worked more so than just playing harp would have. And so I feel very fortunate that both of my parents were willing to drive me around all over the place to rehearsals and orchestra concerts and things like that, so I was very fortunate.
Well, there are a couple of instruments that you need a good car for, right?
Yes.
It's bass, harp.
Yeah, we bought the dad van, as we called it, for a while. We nicknamed it Bertha because it was so big. Thankfully, I do not drive a van at this point. I drive a Subaru Forester, so it's a little bit smaller. I can either select to have a passenger or not, depends on how much I like them. So
you are carrying your own harp now?
Yes.
Everywhere?
Yep.
And you own your own harp?
Yes.
What harp do you have?
I have a Salvi Ariana.
Nice.
Built in Italy. It's absolutely beautiful. I feel very lucky to have that harp.
Next question is about your ages or history. When did you join the symphony? And if you can remember, it wasn't that long ago. No. What was your very first show here?
So I joined Huntsville Symphony in January of 2020. My first concert was in February. It was a pops concert based around the theme of space. So there was like Mason Bates, Mothership was on that program, Things from the Planets, all of that. And then I was really excited because in March I was going to be able to finally get to work with you because you were not conducting that concert. And then the pandemic happened, and then it took a while for me to actually come back, and it was a little like, what is happening with everything? And thankfully it all worked out really well. In that first season, we did the Mahler 5 Adagietto, which was amazing, and I felt very lucky to get to play it, and it was so much fun, and I was like, okay, this is a great group of musicians. I have loved playing here so far, so I'm very happy here.
So you keep mentioning the playing with other things, although harp is similarly lonely instrument as the piano, let's say. So you practice a lot alone, but chamber music, I believe, is the basis of everything. Without that, so you can't really play in an orchestra either. What's your favorite setup of a chamber music group that employs a harp?
Obviously, I love the WC trio setup of flute, viola, and harp. I think that that's a really effective grouping. It sounds really beautiful. There's a lot of music that's been written for that. I'm in a new music collective right now, and so we do a lot of commissioned works and new pieces and things. So with that, it's a little bit more flexible in terms of who I'm playing with and things like that. Like in May, we're going to be playing a piece for cello, viola, and harp. And then I've done things with bassoon, viola, double bass, and harp. We're a pretty low sounding instrument heavy group, but it's really fun because we get to play these new pieces and things like that. So essentially, I guess with violists is kind of the big thing, is like the consistency of...
How about harp ensembles?
Harp ensembles are fun. I did some of those growing up. There's some really amazing harp duos. Carolyn Lazat wrote Raga for two harps, which also employs some percussion elements as well. So in the part I was playing, I had ankle bells on my ankle and was like stomping my foot rhythmically, and it created a cool effect with it. I've gotten to play that a few times. My favorite time was when I got to play it at Orford Music in Canada with my friend Matt Dupont, and it was just like such a rewarding experience and so much fun to play with him, and we've stayed really great friends ever since.
So we kind of slipped into the next question here. Is what else you're doing in the music world other than playing with the ages? So do you actually play with any other symphony orchestra?
Not full time. I sub around a lot. I've subbed with Louisville Orchestra, Cincinnati Symphony, and a few others kind of in the Midwest region. I mentioned the music collective. It's called New Downbeat. That's based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm finishing a doctorate in harp performance at College Conservatory of Music through University of Cincinnati, and hopefully that will be done by the end of this year. Fingers crossed. I actually get myself to finish it. But those are kind of the big projects right now.
So what are you writing your thesis on?
I'm doing my project on harp orchestral study books from about 1880 through early 1900s. There were 5 major European male harpists that wrote these orchestral study books, but they've been kind of forgotten to time because their careers were so much more focused on performing in orchestra than teaching. So I've been looking at like putting together a timeline of their careers, why they would have been qualified to write these, why they may have needed to, their approaches to the excerpts, especially the ones that most commonly come up on auditions, and then learning them with their markings and things like that, and demonstrating like why these would work well for either auditions or performing in orchestra.
So that's kind of the history of how your instrument became an adult instrument,
Yes.
right? How it grew into the role that it's playing now. And you yourself working on this, if you're playing contemporary music, what's your experience with contemporary composers? They come and they're like, oh, can you play your harp with a comb or with a spoon? It's very rare that contemporary composers write harpy stuff for harp, right?
Yes. It's really interesting to see how creative composers can get with it. I have actually played a piece that involved spoons, not just the Bartók Concerto for Orchestra, but something else. There's a lot of things that kind of have the harp playing in more of a percussive role and kind of experimenting with the sound colors that are possible. So typically when I'm working with composers, I like to at least have them sit down with me and like see what the harp is like, see how it feels, all of those kinds of things, because I've had some interesting experiences, shall we say, with some composers that haven't necessarily done that. There was one piece I did some like composer workshops with that involved like slapping the bass wires way too many times in a row, and so my hand was like all red afterwards, and so I went up to him and I was like, my hand should not look like this, and he was like, what do you mean it hurts? I'm like, I'm slapping metal, it's gonna hurt. And then I've had composers that have been really receptive to things and have written really well, and it's clear that they've like either talked to harpists or have listened to what we've had to say. Orchestration books are a great place to start. Sibelius Academy Online is a great place to start, but nothing beats actually talking to a person and seeing what the instrument can do and how it actually functions in terms of what you're doing, and making sure that it's comfortable for the musician and safe for the instrument. I also had an experience with a composer that thought I should splash rhythmically with water with my foot while I was playing, and
Nope.
then put my shoes back on, and I was like, that's not gonna work. The instrument's a lot more money than what you are offering me, which is nothing. So no, we're not doing that.
This is not a water harp.
Correct.
Yes.
Not yet. We don't have that yet.
So you're fairly new to our professional business here.
Yes.
Because my next question is about kind of comparing of what you were thinking, let's say 10 years ago, and what you're thinking about our business now and where it's going and where it's headed, and how to do it better or how to do it well. But I can ask you about your idea about this business before you gotten into this business. So let's say you were growing up interested in playing an instrument, you played at school, you played different instruments, and then you ended up with the harp, and then you go like, well, okay, this is gonna last for the next 1,000 years. This is fun. Symphony orchestras are always gonna be around, and this is what I'm gonna do. How was that?
I definitely knew it was what I wanted to do. I've never really strayed too much from that, wanting to play the harp in an orchestra. I went to Eastman School of Music for my undergrad degree, and I was fortunate enough to play with a lot of different orchestras in that school program and things like that. But I think conservatory life gets to be a little bit of like a bubble, and you get really kind of illusioned with like that aspect of things and kind of the expectation in some ways of the setup of like, okay, you're going to win a job eventually and all of that kind of stuff, but it doesn't always happen, and it doesn't always happen as quickly as we would like.
I mean, you said that your mom would tell you
Mm-hmm.
to learn a section instrument, right?
Yeah.
So she had knowledge about the dangers of this profession, right?
Yeah.
That it's much more difficult to make it in the harp world than it is in the violin world, because you just need more violinists. But
Yeah.
of course, there are much more people studying
Mhm.
violin also. Do you still have nightmares about that, or you never had, which is also fine?
Auditions in some ways, it's been a learning process of getting used to doing them. I think it's a completely different skill set in some ways than just playing an orchestra is, because you have to show different skills, and you have to show like being able to play soloistically and really clearly rhythmically and all those things, and then demonstrate your musicality in this like very small fraction of a piece of music and things like that, and then be able to do it by yourself with nothing else to play off of. And then playing an orchestra, you get to kind of experience everybody else who's playing. You have a conductor who's leading and giving their ideas and feedback and all of that. So I think it's two kind of separate worlds, and kind of I was very happy in like just playing an orchestra and being like, okay, this is really fun, and then taking auditions is less fun. But I'm kind of learning to take the wins where I can when I've been taking auditions, and experiencing that and trying to take the positives out of it as much as possible, not getting to be one of those people that kind of has the conspiracy theories about like, oh, this person won because of XYZ. It's more of like, okay, I'm really excited for them, and like wanting to encourage them and, you know, enjoy the fact that my friends are doing well too. So it's kind of it's been a process. I think it'll continue to be one, but it is what it is. It's just part of the industry.
You're a positive thinker, so you think this is going to last your lifetime and maybe your kid's lifetime, and maybe it's never going to go away. Maybe it's going to turn into something completely different 100 years from now.
Yeah, I hope it continues to last. I think it's a mix of, it's using a different art form as a comparison. It's kind of similar to art museums that have like a variety of things. It's something where at times it seems like some orchestras tend to focus on like one period or a few periods of music, and then don't necessarily play as much contemporary things. And I hope to see more orchestras commissioning works and working with composers to bring new works to audiences that are relevant to their audiences and like communities, and being able to express why those pieces are important, because I feel like there's some audience members that get very hung up on the I like these composers and that's about it, and then they don't want to branch out from there. So inviting them to the space of like being open to experiencing a piece of music, and if they like it, great, and if they don't, okay, also fine. They're entitled to their opinions. I think it's interesting seeing some of these orchestras that are doing more pops kind of concerts that are either very like relevant to what's currently popular and things like that. Like there's some orchestras doing like Studio Ghibli sort of concerts or Bridgerton music or things like that. Like I'm excited that we're doing Harry Potter in a few weeks. So I think it'll be kind of interesting to see like if those audiences that come to those are then interested in coming to other concerts as well. I think at times they can be a little bit separate, because some of those folks are like, okay, I'm a really big fan of this particular type of music or this particular film, and I want to go see that. And I hope that for at least some of them, they have that experience of getting to see the film live with an orchestra and go, wow, that's really cool. I'm curious as to what else this group does, and come to our like classical concerts or come to casual classics and things like that.
You really are a positive thinker,
I try.
because you believe in people coming from pubs concerts going to classical, which I'm not saying it's impossible, but sometimes.
One can hope.
So music is your life, and you know, music for most people, most average people who are not in arts, it's just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a hobby outside of music?
Sort of. I have 2 cats that I absolutely love, so being able to play with them and like hang out with them, and also take regular naps, because that's always helpful in the middle of the day sometimes when I get that post-lunch slump. The cats are super happy and they're like, ooh, nap time, great. So they're great. I love reading. am particularly interested in like scientific topics and things like that.
Do you have an e-reader or you read books?
I typically read books.
Books.
Although with my doctorate, it's been a little bit on pause because it's like, okay, I have to read all of these other documents. So I'm excited to kind of get back into reading some more of the stuff that's interesting to me outside of music and is not like a journal article or highbrow musicology articles and things like that. So excited to kind of have a pause from that and be able to actually read some stuff I really enjoy. So
Do your cats like harp?
sort of. The one
Depends.
Yeah, the one when I first got him, when I would practice, he would run away. And now he'll sleep through most things. And then the other one, if I've been practicing for like 30 to 45 minutes, she decides that I need to have a break. And she will sit on the bottom of my harp and stare at me. Or she'll start like nuzzling the like lowest strings and things. And that's when I know she's like, I have had enough. I don't want to hear this excerpt ever again. You need to play with me. So it's kind of a nice like reminder to have a break sometimes because I'll get in the zone and want to just keep practicing. And she's like, no, it's time for me. You're welcome. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else
No.
you have in mind about the meaning of life, the meaning of harp, the meaning of symphony orchestras?
No.
No. Thank you.
But thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.